Hey folks, welcome to an in-depth overview of the Libertyland USA theme park that was just announced. This park is planned to be located in Rapid City, South Dakota. Before we begin, let's quickly view the announcement video. Alright, so I hope you're ready for some long ramblings. Let me first explain who I am so you all kind of understand what my perspective on this project is. So I am a local to the Rapid City area. I was born and raised here, and many years back I found a bit of an itch that I couldn't scratch without traveling. And that itch is amusement parks, theme parks, and roller coasters. I joined a coaster club, have attended enthusiast and club-only events, and have visited parks all over the United States. I have followed industry news from little things like a remodeled restaurant at a small family park, all the way to major coasters breaking ground at major parks. I have made a ton of friends in the hobby and have visited over 40 different parks and have ridden well over 280 different roller coasters. So for someone from Rapid City of all places, you might say I'm a little more experienced than the average local is in things relating to theme parks and roller coasters. Now, why am I telling you all of that? Well, I'm a little pessimistic about the reality of this project even breaking ground. Let me explain by breaking it down into a bunch of different factors. First, let's talk about the location. On a national scale, it's pretty much the middle of nowhere, with the nearest population center with a metro population exceeding 1 million being Denver, which is a good 6-hour drive away. On a regional scale, it's situated in a fairly tourist-heavy area, which is great. We have the tourist traffic to support a small park. The Black Hills has a vibe that's not much different than Branson or Pigeon Forge. Though not as developed, quite a few folks make repeat visits to the area, especially with Sturgis Bike Week, Deadwood, the national parks. And Rapid City is kind of the hub city of the area, with the area's only airport with commercial flights as well as the bulk of the area's hotel rooms. But ultimately, the region only has a metro population of around 144,000. Now on a local scale, well, it's close to plenty of hotel rooms in the interstate, so at least the access isn't really a concern. The land itself is currently nothing more than an empty grass field with a dried up creek and some cottonwoods. Nothing really exciting. The neighbors though. Oh, the neighbors. Well, to the south you have a Fleet Farm.
You need my help. It's like, I need you to come meet me over at the Fleet Farm. I says, oh, the Fleet Farm. He says, yeah, so he says, yeah, the Fleet Farm. I says, the Fleet Farm, Father? He says, yeah, the Fleet Farm. He says, the Fleet Farm, Father.
Some hotels. To the west, you have a shopping mall that's dying a slow death. And to the north, well, you have trailer parks, auto salvage yards. So, yeah, definitely gonna have some amazing views from that Ferris wheel. Now, let's look at the overall scope of the project. The project is more than just a theme park. It's also an RV park, an apartment complex, resort hotel, and a lifestyle center. I've seen this before in a history with some other parks that were developed. And unless your company is named Universal or Disney, having all of this in one development is unlikely to pan out. You might get the RV park and the theme park, or maybe just the lifestyle center and the apartment complex. But all of these, from a developer with no past experience in themed entertainment, well, I wish you luck. You're probably going to need a little more money than you initially thought. So let's talk about the attractions and the concept art. I'm of course just focusing on the theme park itself and not like the RV park or the apartments, as those aren't really all that interesting. In terms of the rides we can see in the concept art and the announcement video, we have what looks to be a B&M looping coaster of some sort, with a vibe that's fairly similar to something like, say, the Swarm at Thorpe Park, which would be a fantastic ride at a park like this, but I don't think the developers quite realize that a coaster of that type will set them back around the neighborhood of $20 million. Then we have a parachute tower, which is interesting because in the amusement industry, that was an Intamin product that was made back in the 1970s. Intamin hasn't made a new one in quite some time, and most of those older installations are long since defunct. There are a few flat air rides in that area of the park, but nothing to write home about. Then in the fairgrounds area, which other than some generic flat rides, has a super concept arty looking wooden coaster, so you can't really give an idea of who made it or what it is, but we'll just throw it out there. Wooden coaster, $10 million. Just be prepared to drop a lot of money into it every year for upkeep and maintenance. I think you could always go the hybrid route, which will cost a little more right off the bat. They can be slightly maintenance headaches, but they'll have a ride that will last them quite a bit longer without constant track work. There's a large Ferris wheel in that area, so you can get those epic views of the Fleet Farm and some salvage yards. There's also a wild mouse in the announcement video. Leaving the fairgrounds, you move into the Dakota territory, which appears to have a log flume. Good luck finding someone to sell one to you that's not like a shoot-the-chutes ride. There's also an S&S tower, which is fine. A mine train coaster of some sort, and a rapids ride. So, not a bad ride lineup, just some of it's kind of expensive and not terribly realistic, but then again, it is all very concept art, so, what we get in reality could differ quite a bit. So, the park themes and areas. This might show a little bit of political bias on my part, but just bear with me here. The front entrance area of the park is called Liberty Landing, which seems to be going for a colonial New England theme. So, okay, that's nice enough, I guess, but not really a ton to work with. The area lacks much for interactive attractions, which can cause some problems with guest foot traffic. The shops in that area will see heavy traffic in the morning at open and in the evening at close. Otherwise, the infrastructure, the staffing, it's all going to be wasted during the day, as there is nothing attracting guests back to this area of the park midday. Then we move into Victory Field, which seems to have a generic aeronautical theme. It's a fun enough theme, and it would be easy to give nods to the area's history with the Air Force, but in a theme park, it's a very easy area to get run down over time. The lack of shaded elements can make the area rather unpleasant on hot days. Then we have Freedom Fair, which is pretty much generic amusement park. I've seen these themed areas before at the Great America Parks, and yeah, it's pretty low effort, and also it can print money with all those Midway games. On to Dakota Territory, which has probably one of the most overused themes for parks in general. Western, Frontier, Pioneer. At least they won't really have to do much homework there. Alright, and then the last area is the Black Hills. This one is a bit of cultural appropriation. And for those familiar with the area, it's a very, very sensitive subject. Racism between the native populations and the white settlers, per se, is unfortunately still alive in the area. And some of the travesties that happen in the Black Hills makes it not really just a bad area of the park, but it seems very regressive for the area as a whole. The park as a whole would be much safer from political virtue signaling and cultural appropriation if they would have taken like the Lost Island approach and built their own fictional lore, or tried to get some sort of licensed IP, which I don't really see that happening around here. Alright, so back to some more generic Planet Coaster gameplay. So that's kind of my overall thoughts on the situation. Share your comments. I'm not really going to keep my fingers crossed that this park is ever going to come to true fruition. The area as a whole has had a rough history with like water parks and theme parks that just get announced and they get concept art, and suddenly we have like pieces of like water slides laying in a field somewhere, and then they start breaking ground, and then the project just stops. It's happened a couple times for water parks, and it's also happened once with a theme park up in Deadwood. So I really just don't think that the local population has enough investors that are willing to drop the kind of money that's necessary to open a park of this caliber. Like, don't get me wrong, I feel like the Black Hills could use a theme park. I would probably prefer to see something more along the lines of, like, say, Knoebels. You know, less emphasis on theming, classic rides, a just overall comfortable environment that people can visit. Large camping area, and they could easily do something like that in the Black Hills. It doesn't really require like this over-the-top theme park environment that you see with so many regional parks and national chain parks. But as a whole, I just don't see this happening. Fingers crossed, I'm optimistic. I would love to have, you know, a hybrid coaster or a wing coaster or something literally just up the road from where I live, so I can just, you know, casually go for a couple quick rounds on my day off. But, you know, it's just not something that I really see coming to fruition to the Black Hills. And we've seen a ton of parks like this getting announced just in the last year, and so many of them are in the Midwest. Like, there's one in Oklahoma. Really, of all those parks that were announced in this past year, the only one I see coming to fruition is the Universal Kids Park in Texas. And that's probably more so just because Universal does not announce things until they're ready. You know, they announced Epic Universe and they broke ground practically the next day. And Epic Universe it's happening. Whereas this one, you know, that field north of town, I just don't see that as a good spot for a park, and I don't think that the people behind it have the experience and the know-how, unless they just have a ton of money. I just don't see it happening. Anyways, enough rambling. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you disagree with me or you agree with me, just let me know. I'm just curious. I want to know what you all think about this whole thing. Anyways, that's my overview on Liberty Land, USA and Rapid City, South Dakota.